This man's eyes were so deep that he was staring at the little silver fox. He gave up on his idea decisively. A fox couldn't possibly answer his questions, but his mother did say something like that, so there's no reason to think that way. If someone hadn't pushed his mother into the fire, he wouldn't have been born into a family that suffered. Apparently the little silver fox was trying to comfort him, killing his mother and all that just wasn't possible. But she couldn't talk now as a little fox, so she had to find a way to change back to her original form. So the little silver fox wanted to find a place to transform, but Mo Sheng was eagerly chasing after it. She was running in a panic when she knocked over a glass of water and spilled it on his shirt. After all, he is a serious cleanliness freak, so he should be in the shower right away. Sure enough, Mo Sheng instantly exploded with anger, stating that she should wait here and not run around. Then he huffed and puffed his way to the bathroom, and the little fox even looked like he had succeeded in his plan. I didn't realize she'd run to the door. It was a good chance to escape and take human form. Mo Sheng was in the middle of rinsing his body when his mobile phone kept ringing outside the door. He had to rinse it off carelessly. Then he lifted his feet and walked slowly out of the bathroom to pick up his mobile phone. He didn't bother to wipe his half-dried body and hurriedly answered the other caller's call. It was actually Liushuang who had successfully transformed into a human form and pretended to have just come back to say that he was going up to look for him. But Mo Sheng happened to see the doorway and realized that the little fox had escaped again. Liushuang had long been tired, but she could only drink water to hide it. After she quietly surveyed Mo Sheng, she noticed that his hair was wet had he showered. Mo Sheng lowered his eyes to watch the document, and answered the other party's question in a tone of voice and its flatness. I spilled coffee on my body, so I had to go rinse it off and change into clean clothes. Obviously Liushuang pretended to be puzzled. How did the coffee get on his body? He stated it was a fox, and was going to train it up and give it to her, but it ran away. So she couldn't help but think that although it was well-intentioned, it sounded a bit awkward to her. She fidgeted a little in her seat, how to cause the conversation that had just been going on to continue talking. Apparently when she hung her eyes in thought, Mo Sheng was also calmly handling the documents in his hands, but she simply couldn't help but speak. How was your day? Anything interesting? He had to look up at the other man, not expecting her to ask such a strange question, but he won't talk to his lover about his woes. The arrogant president wants to save face after all. Liushuang, however, was not happy about it. If you have something troubling you, you can talk to me about it, but there's nothing he can't solve, so she'll just stay with him. She decisively rebuffed the other's idea, stating that she would not be by his side. At this point Mo Sheng came to the point of interest, and with unparalleled cooperation inquired why she had refused to. I don't want to be around you all the time and do everything you say. I'm going out and getting a job. Obviously Mo Sheng is upset. Didn't I give you the card? You can swipe it as much as you want, but it's not about money. She has her own business and doesn't want to be kept like a small animal. But there's no tradition within the Beals family of letting women go out to work. Liushuang was instantly unconvinced. Why couldn't he work himself? I don't want to be wrapped up in you every day like a doddering flower, and then have nothing left when you abandon me. But Mo Sheng won't abandon her and will give her a lifetime of money. Liushuang was incomparably angry. When will you change this overbearing problem? But they'll be leaving us soon, and she'll have to quit even if she finds a job. Liushuang was instantly shocked. Why did he have to leave S City? Isn't it good to live here? The Regulus family's affairs were soon dealt with, and he naturally wanted to take her back to the European headquarters. Cloudflare Frost instantly brainstormed which country in Europe we're going to. I didn't realize they were going to F, and she had to learn the language as soon as possible. She suddenly became downcast. Could the complexity of the F language really be learnt? So she suddenly had a flash of insight and said that she wouldn't be living there for long, so she didn't need to learn. It's true that they don't stay in one country for long. After all, they have to go around the 7 continents almost every year. Liushuang was even more dismayed. Then just how many languages do you know? Instead, Mo Sheng said there were about a dozen that were skilled, and 20 to 30 that could speak some. She covered her ears and didn't want to hear it. She had nothing to say to this school bully, but he thinks it's normal to know several languages. Obviously Liushuang has his hands more than crossed. No one can learn dozens of languages as easily as you do. I'm sure it's his indifference that pisses people off the most. So she huffed and puffed and went invisible in front of him and quickly ran to Mo Sheng's side. She was going to hit him in the head. After all, she didn't want to do anything else but hit him. Instead, Mo Sheng stretched his arm and grabbed it, easily catching Liushuang, who was stealthily trying to do something evil. I didn't realize you could see me. My stealth skills won't be easy to spot. In fact, he could feel the wind, the breeze she carried with her as she walked forward. He crept closer to her side, and the unique scent of her body. You said you had nothing to say to me, the school bully, but did you have anything to say to Ho Lang Ming? Liushuang was suddenly confused. Why did he suddenly remember these things again? She pondered for a moment and said decisively that of course there was. He Langming didn't have an IQ but had a high EQ, so she huffed and puffed and threw her head to the side, not realizing that the big jealous Musin was also angry. His gaze was tinged with coldness, and he thought it was fortunate that he had already disposed of Ho Lang Ming, but he was still angry. What made her think that Ho Lang Ming had a higher emotional intelligence than him? But Liushuang waved her hand, indicating that even if she had a high emotional intelligence, she had long since disliked the. After all, that guy has cheated so many good women with his mouth. They're all blind to like him. It was then that Musin breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, he had controlled his thoughts of going mad. Liushuang was very happy. Uncle, you have a very low emotional quotient, but you are definitely a dependable wooden stump. Though he resented the strange title, he saw that she was happy and let it go. The office was warm, and Musin had long been unable to resist taking the initiative to kiss the love of his life. But she retained a trace of lucidity, and gently reminded Musin to let go quickly and pay attention to the occasion. He was a little reluctant, but felt happy when he saw the panting woman. He gave the order to never mention that man again and to forget him. But Mo Sheng is a typical rich and handsome man. There should be a lot of women falling for him. I didn't realize he'd never been in love at all, and many women would feel dirty if they came up to him, and he doesn't want to have a lot of women. He'll only have one for the rest of his life. Since he was a child, his mother had told him that he had to be a strong man, no matter how good or bad it was. At this moment, Liushuang was very heartbroken and touched. Looking at the man with affection, she took the initiative and slowly approached him, her cheeks turning red with shyness. Suddenly the phone on the desk rang, interrupting their tender moment, so she shyly got up and left, and it was then that Musin inquired what had happened. I can't believe it's B City that's in trouble, but he can't help him this time. Mo Sheng hung his eyes and pondered for a moment, then said he knew and hung up the phone. Liushuang was listening clearly from the side. Was there something wrong with the Xian Yuan family's affairs? But he said the Regulus family is fine and will be merged into the Biolus group after a while. But this time, it's a bit unusual. Something happened in B City and something happened to Mu Qingli at the same time. He could no longer make a show of not caring, so he proposed Liushuang to accompany him to deal with the. If we go there today, we won't be back until tomorrow night at the earliest. Liushuang decisively refused. Tomorrow was her friend's birthday, she was going to celebrate it together. But Musin doesn't agree, and it's an order, not a negotiation. She was angry and wanted to ask, but the words stopped in their tracks. He's a soft touch, but not a hard touch. If you want to get what you want, you'll have to be patient. Don't forget she's a vixen. She's got to use her powers of seduction. So she reveals her proud figure and looks at the man with a smile on her face. She suddenly and quietly stretched out her foot and gently rubbed against the man's trouser leg. As expected, the man is very good at this. Looking at her with love in his eyes, Liushuang's small mouth was slightly open, fully displaying her beautiful appearance, teasing the man in front of her. Women want to take tomorrow off and allow men to send bodyguards to keep an eye on them. Mo Sheng is not moved. I knock you out or come with me, choose one. Liushuang resisted the urge to lose his temper. Men still need to be persuaded in order to be successful. Let me go to her birthday with her. Okay. I cherish this friendship and I don't want to miss my appointment. You don't want the woman you love to be so heartless that she might break faith with you next time. Liushuang quietly approached his ear. I know you hate betrayers the most, right? Mo Sheng really did not do anything hard until he agreed to her request. She gave him a kiss and walked happily out the door. He then realized with a start that he seemed to have been set up by someone. So Musin traveled alone to other cities and gathered the board of directors with the intention of returning quickly. Liushuang cheerfully came to the clothing shop, chose something and asked the waiter to wrap it beautifully. Suddenly her mobile phone in her pocket, a sharp ringing of the telephone. She had to answer the phone first and ask the person on the other end who was interrupting her good mood, only to see a familiar voice ringing out from across the room. Liushuang, we haven't seen each other for a long time. I didn't realize it was Simon, but he told her to be careful what she said. After all, there should be quite a few people around her, personal bodyguards arranged by his cousin himself. Simon said what she said next. Don't let them hear or she'll regret it. Actually wanted her to go to him alone so that he would consider not killing her friend. She suddenly felt something was wrong. It couldn't be that Zhang Xiaji and Han Yue had been captured. You waited until Mo Sheng left to make your move. You've got a long line. But she had heard voices from across the room and her friends told her to go to the police and not to fall for it. Simon is threatening again. You hear that? Your two best friends. The bodyguard followed her quietly. After all, He'd lost the young lady several times. Hopefully she won't pull any tricks today. After all, she's the one who allowed us to follow. So they were going to enter the shop and said they were going to buy a present for their brother. The waitress was a little surprised. You want to buy underwear for your brothers? The bouncer suddenly rubbed his head in embarrassment and stated that he had to buy underwear for his wife. He suddenly walked forward, intending to quietly follow where Liushuang was going to go. The waiter tried to stop him, but he was too fast to catch up. The bodyguard recklessly opened the door, only to find that it was actually a fitting room for women inside. So he asked the waiter to see if the last one in was still there. The waitress obediently went into the fitting room, and just now it looked like she was going into here. She apologized and lifted the curtain, indicating that a friend outside was looking for her urgently. But after seeing inside the fitting room, she realized that it was empty. By this time Liushuang had already arrived at the door. She looked up at the luxurious villa in front of her, running forward in a panic motion. He pushed open the door and then she stood still and didn't make a move, just told Simon faintly that she was there. But as if she had realized something, she looked stunned for a moment. Kushian had long anticipated her arrival. Why was it so unexpected to see her? She's working with Simon. The enemy of my enemy is my friend, so let my friend go. Kushian was quite vocal and ordered her subordinates to bring her up with a sideways glance, but Hancho Yue didn't bring it up, and Kushian said of course it's somewhere else. At this point Simon also came forward and boasted that he was a gentleman and would not hit a woman, but he's got plenty of ways to make a woman want to die. So he instructed his men to move forward and take this ungrateful woman away. Inside the limousine at this time, the man exclaimed how she had run away again. Mo Sheng pinched his forehead with a headache and asked his subordinate across the room what it was about this time around. My men said there was a message from Simon that it might have something to do with her leaving. Simon threatened Mo Sheng to give up all his missions, or else Liushuang's life would be in danger. Mo Sheng hurriedly ordered that things on the B City side must be dealt with within an hour. Inside the abandoned factory on the western outskirts of S City, an evil plan is being carried out. Simon had actually brought Liushuang here, and after yanking off her blindfold, she shouts forward anxiously, but the kidnapped person is her friend Hancho Yue. She looked at the duo. I'm the only one you want as a hostage, so release them. But Simon disagrees, and her many escapes from Musin are simply not trapped. But do you think I'm at your mercy just because you have me? Simon's face was grim as he expressed his regret that this was the case. If you know I'm going to escape, then I must have something to fall back on. Kushian looked disdainful. She really thought she could escape from here, but Liushuang is not a vegetarian. Directly back to the attack to try to see. Both of them were a bit shocked and then shut up at the same time. After all, they didn't dare to take this risk. At this time Mo Sheng stood in the building. His figure even looked a little lonely. The subordinates suddenly reported that after their investigation, they have news of Miss Yun. He suddenly intended his thoughts, and his cold, hard voice inquired where the news of the. They sniffed out a taxi driver who had been commissioned by a young lady to deliver the note, so the subordinate stepped forward and handed him that kind of note with both hands respectfully. Mo Sheng, however, suddenly thought that in an hour's time, she meant that she didn't want him to intervene, but it's a good thing she knew to notify him. She'll be punished when she gets back. Kushian was a little scared. If she didn't let those two go, she looked like she was going to be a fish out of water. Simon, however, is not threatened, stating that there's too much trouble to simply kill and save leaks. Kushian has no plan of her own. She just listens to what others say. Apparently Liushuang is getting impatient. Have you guys worked out a plan? Simon said he'd let them go if she was a good hostage. She's happy with that, and she'll only cooperate 2 hours after they're free. Simon, however, agrees, but in his heart, he's determined to kill them when they hang up. So the subordinates went to the hostages and untied them all. While they were let out, they actually accused Liushuang of why they came, but she felt that she would never regret having such a close friend in her life. She rushed forward to reassure, "You're just being dragged along. I'll sort these things out." She took her hand as a sister and wrote a secret code on it. After Zhang Xiaojie suddenly understood, her expression actually began to stop worrying, but she couldn't help at all, so she planned to leave with great sadness. Liushuang stood still, his eyes watching his friend as he gradually moved away after. They're going to change places, too, in case these two go out and get help. Liushuang clasped his hands on his chest and didn't care. Just let them do whatever they wanted to do. They were let out, only to find countless dark shadows following behind them. Hancho Yue's eyes are fierce. They don't want to let us go. They're waiting to kill us. So he clenched his fists with both hands, intending to rush forward and die with the black shadow behind him. But Zhang Xiaojie stops him and Lu Fang writes on her palm for them to go east. Hancho Yue looked in the east direction. There were dark shadows waiting for them in the east as well. Liushuang and the others looked at their friends in front of them until their figures faded into the distance. Simon came up to her at this point and indicated that her friends had left safely. He handed over his mobile phone to prove he'd kept his word. They had run out to reassure her after she listened to the coded sounds coming from inside. So Simon took the phone and put it in his pocket. So now you have to keep your word as well. Liushuang looked helpless and clasped his hands on his chest to show that he didn't care at all. I didn't expect them to grab her hands and lock her wrists tightly with handcuffs. I only saw Liushuang looking flustered. What are you doing? I've promised to cooperate with you. Xian was a bit happy. What she said about running away at any time was bragging. A chain would solve the problem. Simon thought himself handsome as he shook his glass. What would happen if she was touched by someone else? Liushuang has long been fed up with their faces, so let them be proud for a while. Woman says outright that if she's not clean, her boyfriend will love her even if she's a germaphobe. Of course it's hard to say if Musin would have killed him if Simon had touched her. Xian cannot help but have fallen into such a situation still so crazy. Liushuang looked at the woman without a care in the world. You're just jealous of me. Xian, having been gassed, was actually going to play dumb and refused to admit it. After all, Mo Sheng had never looked at her properly, and Xian Yuanheng had never really loved her either. That's why she hated Liushuang and the fact that they were focusing all their attention on her. After Xian was struck by the hatred hidden in her heart, she even spilled red wine on Liushuang. She searched angrily for the whip, intending to beat the ungrateful woman to death now. Apparently Simon had been intimidated, because she had just made a very strong statement. Simon told her not to worry, he'd find a way to get her out of this. Liushuang hung her head low. Her face was stained with wine but she didn't show any fear at all. So they went out and ordered their men to let the woman inside have a good time without killing her. I didn't realize that she had transformed into a little silver fox, her little paws slipping right out of the handcuffs. Xian was quite confident that she would enjoy her miserable appearance, but when she looked back, her gaze was incredibly shocked, only to see that the handcuffs in front of him were empty, and actually let her really run away. But she was here just now. Is she a demon? Why did she suddenly run away? Liushuang had long since turned on her stealth skills, and now she was just waiting for them to leave so she could run away. Simon, being a big man, was a little scared. Was that woman really a demon? Sure enough, he started shooting indiscriminately, fearfully trying to kill the demon. Liushuang said it was bad. This guy was scared and shot randomly. How was she going to dodge it? But before she could dodge, she was actually hit in the stomach by the gun. Simon looked at the droplets of blood splattered in front of him and looked even more dismayed and scared. He looked around in fear. He didn't think there was really a ghost. He didn't want to die here. But Xian wasn't scared. There was no such thing as a ghost. It was just someone pretending to be a ghost. Suddenly her shoulders were grabbed and she was so scared she stopped talking. She looked in horror at the visitor, who turned out to be a man wearing a mask. The masked man violently pushed the two of them away and quickly rushed inside the warehouse where Liushuang was locked up. Xian was banging on the door like a madman. What was going on and who had just rushed in? When they heard the glass breaking inside, they were stunned for a moment, so they couldn't wait any longer, and after crashing through the warehouse door with force, only to find a large pool of blood on the ground, the person inside had disappeared without a trace. Simon was already terrified and kept screaming, "Who the hell was it?" Suddenly a bullet struck instantly, slicing down Simon's cheek. They looked behind them in horror as to who had the audacity to. I didn't realize that it was the released duo that had arrived on the scene with the life-saving dare. They were instantly surrounded. Mo Sheng had long lost his patience. Where the hell was Liushuang? If you get down on your knees and beg me, I might tell you. Mo Sheng ordered his bodyguard to step on his hand so hard that he wailed continuously. He kept looking around, and his expression actually became more and more serious. There were many bloodstains on the ground. He didn't dare to imagine that if these were all Liushuang's. Apparently he couldn't wait, coldly asking Simon if he'd figured out what he was going to say. Simon breaks down and yells, "Demon, you're a complete monster. He doesn't seem to want to talk. Send him to the Bridge of Sighs." Simon was even more frightened of that place, and he hastened to say that he would confess at once. He had her chained to the wall, but then he turned around and disappeared, so he felt terrible and raised his hand and shot, and then someone broke in and jumped out the window and escaped. It seemed she must have used stealth to escape, but who was it that saved her? The helicopters above are rumbling on their mission. Liushuang was suddenly jolted awake by the sound and slowly opened his eyes. I didn't realize that it was Wan Qian who was looking at her with a gentle gaze. She was suddenly overwhelmed with sobriety. "Why did you suddenly appear to save me?" Before she could wait for his reply, She sat up hastily, and at the same time the wound began to ache. Wan Shiqian stated that her wounds had been treated and it still hurt a lot. It's not fatal, but he's lost a lot of blood and needs to stay in bed. After all, Frosty's bloodline as a silver fox is incredibly precious, isn't it? Liushuang pretended to be unintelligible and lowered his head to pick up a glass of water and slowly drank it up. But Wan Yiqian didn't care, as long as she would follow him. Now they're on a plane, but he's her fiancé, so of course he's taking her home to get married. I have a boyfriend, don't joke about that. Is it just a coincidence that you saved me this time? Wan Yiqian explained in a resigned manner. I worked so hard to save you, not to mention that you still doubt me. She and her helplessness. This is still the fluttering gentleman, gentle as jade Wan Yiqian. She waved her hand in embarrassment. How old are you? Don't act like a little kid. Wan Yiqian, however, is very murderous. Anyway, he is younger than Mo Sheng. She has no way to call him uncle. In fact, he didn't know about Simon's plan, having heard it from Xian Yuan Heng's mouth, but he admitted that he took her on a whim, and that he couldn't get away from Musin without doing so. But why did you take me away? Don't give me that 3 lifetimes in a row excuse. But Wan Yiqian said that each of them had something they had to accomplish. At this time, Mo Sheng sat forlornly in front of the window. Countless news actually came one after another. The bodyguard reports that the heir's mission has been successfully completed, but what awaits him is actually getting out. He held up his mobile phone awkwardly and actually looked a little flustered. He apologized respectfully to Mo Sheng and then hurriedly planned to slip away quickly. Sure enough, he's still pining for Liushuang. Where on earth has she been taken? The number of luxury cars that appeared in front of us actually drove one by one to the courtyard of a nearby mansion. Wang Qilian opened the door for her in a gentlemanly manner, while the woman looked around curiously. It means that this is where he was born and where he's always lived. He suddenly took out a necklace and tied it to her white neck with his own hands. This will mask her scent. Otherwise, there's no guarantee that father and the others will find her. But didn't he go to the trouble of bringing her here for them to study? However, Wan Yiqian said that she was a treasure. How could he not bring her over to the study? At that moment, a subordinate appeared in front of him with a stretcher and wheelchair, and asked the young master what he needed. But Liushuang was suddenly upset. I can walk and move. What stretcher wheelchairs? Wan Yiqian felt that what she said was not unreasonable, so he picked her up and indicated that he would just go in like this. How could she be happy with a man's touch? But if she moved, the wound would open. An aunt suddenly appeared at the door. She warmly welcomed the young master home, and Miss Ling was waiting for him too. Miss Ling knew that the young master was coming back today, so she came here early to wait for him. Wan Shiqian, however, felt something was wrong. She wouldn't be so concerned about him as a brother. Was there someone else? Auntie Tao lowered her head in embarrassment. Young master really knows what's going on. Miss Mu is here. Liushuang looked around vigilantly. It seemed like the atmosphere was a bit off right now. Obviously this wasn't something she should be thinking about, as Wang Qilian was already carrying her towards the door. Wan Yiling had already stood at the door. She said she had waited for Big Brother for a long time. Mu Qingying also looked at him expectantly. It seems to like Wan Shiqian, a big beautiful woman. For his part, Wan Shiqian looked apologetically at the two ladies, and as a considerate gentleman should have gone to wait for the lady. So don't wait for him next time. He'll come in person if he needs to. Wan Yiling accused him of having an attitude. Shouldn't he consider making it up to them? He said he wanted to take care of his injured friend, and that everything had its priorities. Mu Qingying was surprisingly very approving. She felt that what Wan Shiqian said was very reasonable. This injured friend is a girl. It's inconvenient for you to take care of her. Liushuang suddenly had some impression that the name Mu Qingying seemed very familiar.